welcome to Dark Whispers, where I tell you murder mystery stories. I've literally been working on this story for a really long time. It's a very interesting one with a satisfying ending. Justice is served. Okay, so Ken McElroy was born in 1934 in Skidmore, Missouri. He was the 15th of 16 children. That's right. His mother had 16 kids and he was the 15th one. So as you can imagine, he was probably not being watched or tended to as often, and he was very mischievous, always getting in trouble. Is it mischievous or mischievous? Mischievous. So he's always getting in trouble. No one was really watching him. And I'm assuming he wasn't getting all the love and care that he needed because his mother was a stay-at-home mom, tending to all the kids or trying to tend to all the kids. And his father was a sharecropper. So they were very poor. His father was also known for being an alcoholic. So he didn't have like a loving home environment. So with Ken being like somewhat neglected and not have anybody really like being an authority figure, he kind of was just always doing what he wanted to do. His behavior of him being like a bully and having like a really mean spirit just kind of carried on. He was known to being very like cunning and being able to like get people to submit or like do whatever he wants. He just had that, oh, I got an email. Something about him he was able to do that with people. I don't know how to describe that in any other way than that. So at the age of 15, Ken dropped out of school. And that's where his mischievous behavior and him bullying and being just not a good kid, not being an awful person, I guess, carried out into the town. So his reputation for being a bully carried on into his adult life. He started racking up a criminal record where he was stealing animals, cattle, farm chemicals, gasoline, and vandalizing property. Just basically being a terror. Able to avoid conviction because he had a really good attorney. It was Richard Gene McFadden. Richard was quoted saying, quote, "He was punctual, always said he didn't do it, paid in cash, and always kept coming back," end quote. Another way that Ken also avoided conviction for any of these charges was one, his attorney, and two, Ken would stalk and harass all of his witnesses. He would stalk them by having direct contact with them and harassing them or going to their houses. Ken was very relentless. He was very, very aggressive. And he was like a big burly man, and he had like this scary look to him. So he utilized that, like highly utilized that, and it really intimidated people the way that he looked. Okay, so like side note, while all of this was going on, I'm like, oh my God, maybe this is also another reason why he was getting away with so many things, is because like the population was very small there. So in 1970 and 1980, when all this was going on, there was 430 to 440 people living in Skidmore, Missouri. So it was a very, very, very small town. Again, I'm not sure if like the whole small town vibes and like the courts, like if that, like a small, I don't know if that all played into him getting away with so many things, because he was charged with so many things or convicted with so many things, but never was charged with anything. So we already know Ken was a horrible person. He fathered 10 children. They were all from various women, and a lot of his relationships with women, the timeline was kind of tricky because he was with a lot of, I wouldn't even say women, they were young girls, where it involved a lot of abuse and sexual assault. Was really sad. But he preyed on young women and abused them. I'm going to focus more on his last wife, Trina, and their story, because it's very crazy and sad. Very crazy, heads up. Very sad, heads up. But that was his last relationship and his last wife. And she was with him right when he died. Okay, so Ken meets Trina around 1969, 1970. At the time, Trina was 12 years old. And Ken was 35 years old. It didn't go into detail about how exactly they met or where they met at, or if she was like in school and he pulls up next to her and is like, hey, do you want a ride or do you want some candy? But she was in the 8th grade. And Ken and her had a relationship, and he continuously sexually assaulted her, raped her. It went on for a really long time, and Trina eventually got pregnant. Obviously, prior to all this, her parents did not like the relationship at all and did not approve. But Ken being a horrible asshole, being a horrible person, not even an asshole, being very aggressive and relentless, that angered him. That not having the parents' approval angered him. So because Trina was pregnant and a young girl, and Ken was 35 years old, to avoid any criminal charges, he wanted to marry Trina. And her parents did not want that to happen. They did not approve. So what did he do? He burned down their house and shot their dog twice. Luckily, the dog survived both times, but eventually they were forced into allowing Trina to get married to Ken, sadly. At this point, I'm literally like, oh my God, how is he getting away with all these things? It's just like one thing after a freaking another. Well, my friend, it just gets even more worse. He gets into an altercation in 1976 with Romaine Henry. Ken was out on Romaine Henry, or we'll just call him Henry, on Henry's property, shooting guns and weapons. And Romaine comes out there and is like, hey, get off my property and stop shooting guns on my property. They get in an altercation, and Ken ends up shooting Henry in the stomach. Henry was shot twice, and Ken was charged with intent to kill. So you might be thinking, oh my God, finally he gets convicted of something, like something's actually gonna happen. No. So Ken was acquitted of this because, one, his attorney Richard, and two, he was able to get 2 raccoon hunters to lie and say that they were with Ken the whole day and that he was never on the property and this never even happened. Okay, so now we're getting into 1980. It's 1980 and small town, right? They have a local grocery store there that's owned by Ernest Bowenkamp and Lois Bowenkamp. Cute little elderly couple. They're in their 70s, I believe. We'll call him Bo. So Bo and Lois, they own the grocery store. And basically Lois gets in an altercation or an argument with Trina and her kids because she was accusing one of the kids. Remember, Ken had 10 kids. So Lois is getting in an argument with Trina, accusing one of the kids of stealing candy. Ken is enraged by this. So he starts doing his thing where he's stalking and threatening the family, going to their house, basically harassing him, doing what he does with everybody that was witness to all of his crimes in the past, basically doing that. All of this leads up to Ken going to the store and getting an altercation with Bo in the back room, where he eventually shoots Bo in the neck. Luckily, Bo survives. Thank the heavens. Ken was then arrested and charged with intent to kill. Or, excuse me, he was charged with attempted murder. He was tried for assault but was freed on bail while the courts were fighting an appeal to see if there was any like legal errors or if they needed to send it back to the lower or smaller courts to see if there was any other new findings that could find him not guilty of this. So basically, Ken is free because he paid the bail and all of this is going to court. So he's just kind of like doing his thing, like whatever, like ain't nothing gonna happen to me because nothing ever happens to him. He just keeps getting away with shit. So he pays bail and he's like, hell yeah, I'm gonna go to the bar. There's this local bar called D&G Tavern, and he goes there with a rifle baton. So it's like one of those like a rifle gun with like a knife at the end. I didn't know that. But anyway, he goes there and he's like waving around and making threats and talking verbally about what he's gonna do to Beau's family, just like not giving a shit because he keeps getting away with stuff, right? So it's like, why not? I'm just gonna go do my thing, go get drunk, and wave this rifle at the freaking bar. So the townspeople are not obviously liking this. They have not liked any of this at all. They're like, how are we gonna protect ourselves? How are we gonna continue to allow mistreatment of our people in town? How are we going to protect ourselves, our family? Like, we're really, really worried. So fast forward a little bit, it's 1981. It's been about a year since the whole Ken and Beau thing. The courts is just dragging it on. A bunch of town people go to Legion Hall. It's the local town hall, and they go there with the county sheriff. His name is Dan Estes. They go there to have a meeting and they're like, Sheriff, county sheriff, what can we do to protect ourselves where, you know, we're not going to get harmed or anybody else is going to get stabbed or shot or what, you know? And he's going around just R-ing people, stealing, shooting, acting, and nothing's going on, nothing's happening. And the sheriff's like, you guys should start your own like neighborhood watch to protect yourselves, basically is what he says. And they're like, okay. Anyway, so the sheriff leaves and basically the town people are at the hall. I'm assuming they're probably like, what the fuck? Like, that's not anything. That's not going to help us. They get word that Ken is at D&G Tavern, the bar. They're drinking, getting drunk, and he's there. So they're like, oh hell yeah, let's go to this freaking bar. The sheriff leaves. He's like, so the sheriff leaves. He's like, you guys figure it out, start a neighborhood watch. And the town people are like, okay, whatever. So they decide to go to this bar where Ken is at drinking. Ken finishes drinking, buys a 6-pack to drink on the way home, whatever, I don't know, drink when he gets home. He's sitting in this car. So there's about 46 people outside of the bar. And all of a sudden, pop, 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 shots are fired, okay? And Ken ends up getting shot twice. Trina is in the truck with him and doesn't get hit. It's just Ken. No one calls the ambulance. And there's like a code of silence that goes out. Like, no one has any description out of the 46 people out in the crowd outside of the bar. There's no description of who shot Ken. And Trina, you know, has a very vague description of it, but it's not anything solid like, oh, so-and-so did it, or the guy looked like this. It was a very vague description. Everybody in the crowd, the 46 people, no one could give a description, and no one called the ambulance. I wonder why. A federal investigation was done, a thorough one, it was said. And no arrests were made, no charges were made, and the case was closed. So basically the town was like, we're gonna handle this. Like, no one wants to help us. This fool keeps getting away with things. He's just running amok, and he's an awful person. I mean, yeah, it sucks that he had to die and it had to end up like him getting killed. I don't know, I'm kind of like indifferent, right? Like, it's just like the justice system and the courts, they weren't helping the town at all. Like, so in the end, the justice system kind of, again, didn't help, even help Ken in the end. It was just like, they failed him in so many ways, right? And they failed him as far as like even getting him convicted. And in hindsight, they probably could have saved him, you know? The justice system could have saved him. If he like ended up getting convicted of a crime, then he would have been in jail and he would have never died or never got shot, or the townspeople wouldn't have felt like they had to go and take care of things themselves and shoot him. And to this day, no one knows who did it. No one says anything. Everybody's lips are sealed. I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is like my very first episode. I'm gonna continue doing this. I want to post weekly. My plan is to do it every Friday. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys subscribe and like. If you guys like murder mystery and scary stories, like and subscribe.
Okay, go like and subscribe. Or don't.